Welcome to our gLOCAL event on communication strategies for making evaluation more engaging and inclusive. I'm very happy to welcome you and to see that so many people are joining from all over the world. My name is Patrizia Cocca. I'm the Communications and Knowledge Management Lead of the Global Evaluation Initiative, GEI for short. And so the GEI is a partnership that supports countries in building and strengthening their national monitoring and evaluation systems. We engage with country governments through our Centers for Learning on Evaluation and Results that are called the CLEAR Centers. And we have 6 CLEAR Centers distributed around the world. We have the Anglophone Africa in Johannesburg, South Africa. We have the Francophone Africa in Dakar, Senegal. Then we have the Latin America and Caribbean in Santiago de Chile, the Lusophone Africa and Brazil Center in Sao Paulo, Brazil. Then we have the Pakistan Center in Lahore, Pakistan and Central Asia. And then we have the South Asia Center in New Delhi, in India. So why I'm sharing this information is because today our panel is composed of the communication professionals that are working in the CLEAR Centers. And we will hear from them, and they will share with us their expertise, their experiences in promoting evaluation to different target audiences in their respective regions and coming from different backgrounds as well. But also, they are the heroes behind the success of gLOCAL this year. So if gLOCAL is something that appealed to you and you think is going well, is thanks to those folks that you will meet in shortly. Just as for setting the stage, why are we talking about the importance of communication in evaluation? So evaluation findings sometimes are hard to sell. They might not align with what people hope to the impact of their project or program to be. And as a seasoned evaluator said yesterday in another event, being evaluated is not fun. And listening to the evaluation sometimes is even worse, right? The evaluation results. In addition, often evaluation reports are written in a jargon full of acronyms and technical concepts. And this happens although most of the target audience that we have are not evaluation professionals. Our primary audience are decision makers, the beneficiary of the project or the programs that are being evaluated. And to be effective, they need to receive clear, actionable recommendations that are relevant to their field of expertise and that can make them improve the program or the project. So definitely the one-size-fits-all approach in communication does not work if we want the evidence from the evaluation to be used. And even in the evaluation world, evaluators themselves acknowledge the importance of improving the way we communicate about evaluation and their findings. But to date, there are not many conversations about this topic, and that's why we are here today. We hope that with this conversation, we will start a movement to promote better communication within evaluation and M&E, the M&E world. So now I'd like to start the conversation with our panelists. We will have 2 rounds of questions for them. And for all the communication professionals that are joining us today online, we would like to invite you to reflect on the same questions and to share your answer in the chat box. As time permits, we will read them later. And also, I would like to invite again you to pose questions for our speakers in the QA chat. So thank you. And let me introduce the first speaker of the day, Srinivasan. Sruti is based in the CLEAR South Asia Center. So Sruti, welcome. And my first question for you is, can you briefly tell us who are you and how you ended up in the world of evaluation?
Sure. Thanks so much, Patrizia, and a big thank you to GEI for this great opportunity. Hi, everyone. My name is Sruti Srinivasan, and I'm a Senior Communications Associate at CLEAR South Asia. So quick background, I'm not an evaluator. I'm a communications girl through and through. I studied communications at both the undergraduate and master's level and have worked in comms in various capacities across organizations. So I found my way to evaluation because I believe that policy decisions should be based on evidence. And as a communication specialist, I can play a very important role in bringing to light the vast amounts of really rigorous and really insightful evidence and driving it to the right stakeholders. Alongside this, I think thoughtful communications can ensure that technical content is broken down into its most fundamental insights and is disseminated in a meaningful way and in an accessible way to the right people.
Thank you, Sruti. So communication through and through. So what's your secret for making evaluation more understandable and more engaging? We have different target audiences, and how do we make our messages more inclusive?
Excellent question. I think the first step in creating any communications product is to really understand the purpose behind that product. When I get started, I ask two questions, and I think that's kind of sets the tone, sets the base for all the comms work that I do. The two key questions here are, why are we making this product, and to whom is it directed? So just to give a little context, working in communications in India is like working across 29 different countries. We have extremely diverse contexts, languages, and each stakeholder is different in different parts of the country. Understanding the why and the who will allow us to kind of break down this technical content that we receive, right, from our evaluation, from our project teams, and kind of think about what is the most appropriate way and the most accessible way for the audience that we are targeting. We need to really think deeply about the way a stakeholder engages with the larger M&E ecosystem, the way that they engage with our work, and tailor our messages in a way that adds value to their work. So for example, in CLEAR South Asia, we work very closely with government partners. And as is potentially true across the world, they're often very, very busy and may not really have time to engage deeply with the insights that we want to share with them, right? And so how do we get our points across? Government partners are decision makers. When we present any insights to a government partner, their first question is, what do we do now? Oftentimes, they already know what the problems are in any given situation. And so one trick that we like to use here at CLEAR South Asia is to kind of make sure that our work, when we're presenting it to a government partner, is as actionable as possible. So in general, my first step is to reach out to the project team, understand really what the requirements of the project are. What level are we in engaging with the particular stakeholder, and what is the best mode of communicating with them? We really need to meet our partners where they want to be, right? And one thing to remember is that not everything needs to be a report or a slide. So one way that we regularly engage with our government partners is by sharing, articles, social media posts, general updates through WhatsApp, which kind of serves a dual purpose, disseminating our insights and also building closer and stronger relationships with our champions, which eventually helps us, get our insights across more effectively and kind of works towards our larger goal as an organization.
Thank you, Sruti. This is very important, right? So the actionability of the communication, and also meeting the audience where they are, which in the case of South Asia, WhatsApp is one of the places to, one of the tools. Excellent, because this is really different, for example, from Europe. We don't really use WhatsApp for this kind of dissemination. So this is very interesting for me to learn. Thank you, Sruti. So I'd like to now introduce you, Thales Figueiredo da Silva. I just butchered your last name, Thales, but he is from Brazil, and he works as a communication specialist for the CLEAR centers for Lusophone Africa and Brazil. Thales, welcome. So for you, same question. Would you please introduce yourself a little bit and tell us how you arrived to communication and how you arrived to evaluation?
Yes, sure. Hi, Patrizia. Hi, colleagues and audience. I'm Thales. As Patrizia said, I'm from Brazil, so I'm speaking from Brazil now. Bom dia para todo mundo que tá aí. E to talk about my background, how I end up in communication in M&E world. I have a background in communication. I have worked for a long time with video production, mainly in scientific dissemination for a public university in Brazil. And I always loved to learn new things and new topics. So when I produce the videos, I like to relate it with the subjects, and in this process sparked my interest in social sciences. So I decided that I want to work with policy, and I moved to another state in Brazil, Maranhão, and for working with the government in human rights department. There in this department, one of the top priorities of my sector was monitoring a crucial plan, an important plan of the state government. Then was when I first noted M&E and started to learn more about it. And local also took a huge part of it, because gLOCALs ago, I was in a CLEAR-LAC workshop and studying M&E and the public policy cycle. And shortly after this workshop, I opened up this spot at knowledge dissemination, and I thought that there was a huge chance to combine these two fields, and that's it. Now I'm here. Yes, gLOCAL after.
So gLOCAL has been your cupido for M&E, right? Yeah. The responsible. Very well. Well, now you work in Brazil and the Lusophone Africa, which are widely different environment and context and culture. So what has been your secret to make evaluation more accessible and more engaging for your target audience? And can you give us some examples?
Yes, well, like Sruti said, I think understanding the subject is the first step. So you always have to truly make this effort to understand. And M&E is very technical, so have to talk a lot with who knows this stuff, in this case, the evaluators. In this process, I like to create short sentences for summarizing what are the knowledge, what is the project. After this, I think the practical steps to define the audience you want to reach. As Sruti also said, I think these two levels of the subject and the audience is crucial. So many times I think the audience is already know M&E, so our effort on knowledge translation is not a huge effort. because they already know, they are already familiarized with the terms, but to reach a broader audience, this translation is imperative. It's about that I think is more interesting to talk. To make this translation, I think it's helpful to make comparisons, bringing everyday elements to give you an idea of what those outcomes and the research results represents. With that in mind, we choose the format that best fits the subject and the audience selected. My experience at CLEAR-LAC was I had a huge opportunity in the beginning, because when I arrived, the center was presenting the first results of a large-scale study on public policy focused on early childhood. And one of the products that we made was a podcast episode. It's a big opportunity because when you talk about results, it's always a great headline. It's great because highlight the importance of the policy and the research itself, but I think it was a great opportunity also to know the researchers and the work and get familiar with evaluation process. The podcast format facilitates interaction because it's just a talk. On another level, thinking in the audience, the broader audience that we target, we had to create a dynamic narrative. So we combine interviews with different sources in podcast voices. So different voices to combine and create a narrative. So we have the evaluator, the policy managers, and the host that explain the technical terms and create a timeline easily understandable. These technical aspects, I think, must be combined with incorporating a human story, a story that people can relate to. And because people want to identify and empathize with what they're dealing with. And our podcast, we have the opportunity to familiarize the audience with the process during pandemics and how the staff face these challenges and create solutions. So to sum up, I believe the 2 points is that Sruti also said, that audience and understand the subject is not, it's a bit obvious, but it's not easy to address. But only doing that, we can begin to cover the bridge bit, linking these two sides of the story.
Thank you, Thales. Now this is a very good point, and I really liked also the fact that you also mentioned that, the human story, the human dimension, to make it more relatable to the people that are listening, and the use of podcasts. Podcast now it's like the radio big comeback in another form, right? So we bring the podcast and we, with a headset, we listen to them anywhere. So this is definitely a new tool, well, not new, but is a tool that now is getting more and more used throughout. And thank you very much. I also think for the audience part, the challenge for us, at least for me in my career, has been always having small budget or small teams and having to reach a huge variety of audiences. And therefore, there you need to make choices. And how do you talk to, and who do you prefer, and who do you kind of prioritize? Thank you, Thales. So, Cristian, let me come to you now. Cristian Crespo is the only non-com person that we have today. He's actually the director of the CLEAR centers in LAC. So welcome, Cristian, and thank you for joining us. So I'm going to ask you the same. Please introduce yourself and let us know why you are even joining us today, talking about communication. And and how you arrived to the M&E world. What's your journey?
Hola, Patrizia.
Hola.
Hello, everyone. Well, yes, I'm the executive director here at the Center for Latin America and the Caribbean. And definitely, I'm not a communication professional, though communication is really an important part of my work. I am an industrial engineer, and I did postgraduate studies in policy, a master and a PhD. And my trajectory is mostly on quantitative methods, right? So words don't come easy to me most of the times, as all our fellow panelists here, right? So bear that in mind. I worked with central and local governments in Chile. I have worked in universities as a consultant, so I could label myself as an evaluator, yes, but also as someone who is in the evaluation capacity development type of enterprise, right? So relationship with different audiences, with government, with universities, experts, it's really it's a very important part of what I do. And I have learned this the hard way, right? So I remember some years ago, I was doing a very good evaluation, something that was very technically complex, and giving policy recommendations that could save lives. And when my boss saw the document, it was a 5-page document, very actionable, very clear what has to be done. His question was like, why are you doing this? You know, I mean, and I was the evaluation head of a department, you know, so that was what I meant to do, right? But what he really meant was like, this is creating me a conflict. I don't mind about the outcomes of the evaluation and the action plans. If I do what you are telling me, I will have a political problem, right? And the point I want to make with this, and probably what connects with all my next thoughts on communication, is that evaluation is not only a technical enterprise. It's inserted in a very political environment, right? So persuading, communicating, inspiring is really, really important to make change happen, which is what we all want in the end of the day, right? So I'm very glad to be here and be speaking about this, because I think we need it more than ever.
Thank you, Cristian. I couldn't agree with you more. And so would you tell us what's your secret or what's your success stories when it comes to making evaluation more understandable and also more engaging for your target audience? So you shared already an example, but can you think of anything else that either you have done or that you have seen, and that especially in the context of Latin America seems to be most successful?
Mm-hmm. So I had to unlearn a lot of things when I started working in this, right? So imagine myself coming from a PhD. One of the things that I had to unlearn was like, don't communicate evaluation as research, right? So for example, in the research world, for aspects like the contribution of the piece of work to the literature and the methodology, like with a very detailed and precise description, it's very, very important in any kind of presentation or congress related with that. Well, in evaluation, nothing of that matters. At the end of the day, like the target audiences are very, very different, are interested in results, conclusions, and recommendations. It's very much decision makers, policy people, not academia, right? So, and their attention is very limited. And well, that's also something that we are all experiencing, right? So one key piece of advice that I think it's important is jump as quickly as possible in your communication to the conclusions, right? I mean, even in a presentation, even in an article, start by your conclusions and then build the work you do have done structured by that. So you really get the attention and you really pass the key message from the very beginning, and you are not lost in a long description of the work that you have been doing. And if I can amplify on or expand into that idea, this means structuring your evaluation communication by conclusions, right? And this is a work that requires a lot of synthesis and discipline. Try to really structure your conclusions in one phrase that can fit a heading, a tweet, something that you can share to the journalist, something that you can share through social media, right? So think in a limited number of conclusions, not too short, not too long, and all of these conclusions like really find something, a phrase that can summarize it very well, right? Because this will be very important for communication, right? If you are speaking with a journalist, if you are speaking with a media host, you really need this key idea first to grab attention and then present the evidence, qualitative or quantitative, that supports it, right? And I think last year, we were all these key concepts or tips, we were able to apply it in a project where we presented the results of street vendors, informal street vendors in Chile, which is a huge Latin American problem, right? And I personally did more than 10 interviews in TV, national channels, and media related to these findings, right? And why, like looking backwards, why, or reflecting on this experience, why do I think it was successful? First, we work on a topic that people really care, right? And there's many aspects about it. And we put that topic first in our communication, right? We structured the conclusions in simple phrases that could really grab the attention of our partners, the media, of also TV hosts, right? And we also work with partners that help us to amplify the message, right? And here I connect with your thoughts about Latin America. Here there's many stakeholders that are pushing forward evaluation, and we love the concept of community, right? We can use that in our favor. We can build strong partnerships with people that are aligned with our same interest to expand and amplify the findings of our message in evaluation. And this we need to think this in terms of strategy, in terms of target, when we target our message and our communication work.
Thank you, Cristian. I really love this last point that you make, about looking for strategic partners that can help us to amplify the message. This is also what we have been doing throughout gLOCAL, right? And what we encourage people to do as they attend the events, and is extremely interesting. Thank you so much, Cristian. So now I'd like to continue our discovery of our colleagues here in at the GEI. And I'd like to invite next our speaker, Talitha. So Talitha Saka, she's the communication officer in the CLEAR Anglophone Africa, based in Johannesburg. Hi, Talitha, and welcome. So to you, slightly different question. So please, first of all, let us know where you come from and what's your background and how you end up working in evaluation. But then I'd like to ask you something a little bit more different than I did before. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Patrizia, and good afternoon or good evening or good morning, depending where you're joining us from. My name is Talitha Hlaka. I'm the Communications Officer at the Center for Learning on Evaluation Results in Anglophone Africa. So communications in evaluation, how did I end up here? So it actually happened by chance for me. I used to work as a marketing person. So my background was marketing when I started. So I worked as an account manager for actually the CLEAR Center, for this very CLEAR Center. And what happened is along the line, CLEAR called me and said, hey, we have a post up for communications. Would you be interested? And yeah, and then I applied, and I've been here since. So I've been with gLOCAL since inception, and we continue to learn from you guys. We continue to, improve based on the engagements that we are having and the discussions you're having in your different sessions. And yeah, it's been an interesting ride so far.
Thank you. So I'd like to hear from you. What have been the challenges that you have faced in communicating evaluation and evaluation findings? And if you can give us a little bit, some examples, some of success stories, or what you consider to be a success stories in what you have done, how you overcome these challenges.
Okay, there are a couple to highlight. Let me start by highlighting the aspect of value creation in every. So in marketing, there's this phrase that they like to throw around that says content is king. So that's really just to say, you know, content, the importance of content to be able to, you know, arouse emotions or, you know, drive your audience to actually engage with your content. And that's how I approach comms with everything that I do, to go, okay, how can I create value in what I'm producing out? So, and that is more, especially when you're introducing something new to your target audience, they always want to see what's the value that you are selling out. Like, what should I care about this piece of content or whatever it is that you're trying to communicate to me? And one such example was when we were putting together the parliamentary oversight tool. So the tool was really designed to address the obstacles to evidence generation and channel and use that parliamentary staff and members of parliaments encountered in their mandate to execute effective and systematic oversight. So when we heard about this challenge and we thought about how is it that we're going to address this, we put together a communique together with the developer who would put together with the small budget that we put together so that we can just, you know, kind of put a prototype of what this tool would look like. Essentially, it's an app. But we put that together, and alongside it, we put together a communique to tell a story about, you know, how will the researchers within Parliament use this tool? And this would start with maybe the researcher, you know, collaborating, or let's just say the member of parliament asking for certain research and researchers collaborating on that piece of research that that's needed, and the head of research also being able to oversee the progress on those researches. So the steps continued. It was a long list of steps till the point of where the evidence will then be, you know, presented in parliament. So that's what the tool was about: generation, use, and oversight. And the ability, so when we met with all these members of parliament in Ghana, Uganda, Kenya, all across Anglophone Africa, to just see how much they saw in that product, you know, the way we were able to communicate it, and them even correcting us in some steps, you know, the buy-in that we got from them, and them going, actually, we can do it this way here. This is, you know, this is our process in our parliament, and the other ones will say, and even getting us to think about things that we didn't think about, like, you know, when it comes to hosting the app, how will this roll out, and what are the different data policies within different, you know, country contexts and so forth. So I think that is one element that is very important, just the ability to create value in what you do. The other thing I think that comes, it's sort of like subtle, but it's the ability to leverage on your relationships, the relationships that we build. I think in the same way that you know, how we've been able to build relationship in the countries that we operate in Anglophone Africa. I think I tend to think the same way in comms, you know, wherever we go, to go, okay, who's the person I can speak to in this country, or, you know, so that, because on average, I can tell you, I can get in a quarter, 3 organizations coming and say, Talitha, what are you guys working on? Can you share something with me that I can share, you know, on my newsletter or whatever platform? And that is good for us. That's something that you don't have to really try hard to do. It's something that is almost like affiliate marketing. So somebody's going to do it on your behalf. So, so those are some of the, I would say, successes that I see just arising. And another thing, sorry, I'm going to go on forever, but let me, this is the last, I promise. We're getting to a point where we are able to tell our story very well. You know, we're doing all these beautiful country words. And I think the ability to go, okay, this is what we're doing in Tanzania. Where did we start? You know, where was evaluation in Tanzania when we started? So we just started writing up these stories and showing, you know, how our work in the country has been able to influence certain things, whether on government level and so forth. I think that is also very important, because at the end of the day, the work that we do, we're trying to create change, right? So if we're doing it and we're just doing it amongst ourselves, then we're just talking amongst ourselves and we're not really, you know, creating any change. So that's the one thing. In terms of the challenges, I think there was a question that was asked, and I think maybe this will answer it. I think it's very important when we deal with our project teams. I think it's important for them to understand that Communication is a strategic component of the organization, right? It's there to support the strategic goals of the organization. And therefore, when they do their work, when projects teams conduct their work, they need to start thinking of it also with the lens of comms to say, okay, for what purpose am I creating this? To who is it intended to? What will it be used for? And what is it that I'm trying to get out of it at the end of the day? And I think once we all start thinking that way, it helps us at the end of the day for us comms people to be able to package that material in a way that is useful for the user. Because oftentimes we are not technical people, so we don't know what the technical people know. So if they start thinking that way, when we get into a stage where we start engaging with them, then it becomes such a smooth process. We know now, like, okay, how can we, we can even ask more questions that they didn't think about. And I think the other thing, and this is to comms people, I don't know how many comms people we have, that I think maybe a challenge that we face as comms people, again, is asking ourselves, did our messages land? We doing all this work, but did it actually land to the right audience? And, are we actually doing what we intend to do with them? And I think that it's very important for us to continue to, engage in stakeholder analysis. We take for granted that, we know what our stakeholders want, but you'd be surprised to find out that it's actually not in some cases. We've had a case where we did a stakeholder analysis and we were surprised to find that the majority of our audience wanted what we would think are boring documents, but they were like, no, we want that stuff. So it's not to say we will not innovate and that innovation is bad, but we innovate with purpose. We don't just innovate for the sake of innovation. And it's not to say that what the innovation is bad and they will replace the old long document, but it's very important. I mean, we're dealing with researchers, they need detail. So it's very important to understand who our audiences is and give that back to them. At the end of the day, I think that's something that we need to be very cognizant of, is that it's not really about us. It's about the people that we're trying to communicate to, right? And so that's the only way it will resonate. Thank you, Patrizia. Sorry for taking forever.
I'm sorry, Talitha. I need to put a stop, but it was really interesting. And I think a lot of our listeners here have a lot of pointers to take from your intervention. One key thing for me was the dialogue with the stakeholders, right? A continuous dialogue so that you can refine your messages and your tools and your strategy. Teach people that work with you to think like a communicator, even if they're not a communicator. And then ask ourselves always, did our message land? Thank you, Talitha. This was awesome. So I'll continue to stay in the Africa continent and I'll pass to Doudou. Hi, Doudou. Doudou Ndiaye.
Hi.
Our communication specialist at the CLEAR Center for Francophone Africa in Senegal. Hello, Doudou, and welcome. So please let us know a little bit more about you, what's your background and how you end up in monitoring evaluation.
Okay, thank you very much, Patrizia. Hello, everyone. My name is Doudou. Don't pronounce Doudou like my Nigerian friends and colleagues do. A country where I lived for years when UNIDO sent me to ECOWAS as an international communication expert. I'm not a PhD graduate like my boss, Edoe, but I just have a master business in administration, 2 master's degrees in communication, and 2 university degrees in marketing and journalism. As for the last one, mind that the university is still waiting for me. It's been 4 years to come and present my degree thesis. I'm even one of only the 3 Africans certified as Journalist Trust Initiative auditor, but it's enough. It's enough. No, wait. I haven't skipped a step in my professional development. I have held the positions such as intern, assistant, senior, deputy director, and finally director. And my first professional listen me, my first professional internship in communication was at the World Bank in 2003. And now I'm working with a World Bank project in 2024. I'm asking if it is not the sign for the end for me.
Totally a sign, Doudou.
So,
Doudou, let me ask you then how. Well, you have a long trajectory and you come a long way. And I know you personally, you do fantastic work in Francophone Africa. And so I want to kind of capitalize on your experience. So
yeah.
Let us know and let us, the audience know, what have been the challenges that you have encountered more often, and what are the communication activities that you thought have been the most successful in what you have done, especially in communicating evaluation findings?
Okay. For this, to respond to this question, I should say that CLEAR-Africa, Francophone Africa, carries out several communication activities. But one of the most successful communication activities has been, for me, the best success story we have to highlight has been the institutionalization of quarterly webinars on topical issues relating to monitoring and evaluation for African continent. These online sessions are, for me, a good practice in that they enable diverse profiles such as authorities, experts, beneficiaries, and emerging evaluators to exchange views on monitoring and evaluation issues. This webinars offer a dynamic platform for sharing expertise and experience, facilitating rich multi-dimensional interaction in the region, in this field. And in the early days, not only was this not a regular occurrence, but it only interests a small number of target experts, or those with a particular interest in the topic being developed. But we have changed the strategy of mobilization of the targets. And this changing strategy has made a significant impact on the audience and interest generated by these meetings. At the beginning of the years, for instance, we launched a call for proposals like we did last year for topics based on current issues interested in the region. That has enabled us to engage targets from all sectors. I would like to cite expert, non-expert, civil society, the press media, students, the VOPs, etc. And as well as at all levels, like ministerial authorities, ordinary citizens, students, from director to head of department. But now we have moved from an audience of a few tens of people to almost 1,000. And the example we can give is the most recent webinar held in January 31st, 2024, on the subject of uneasy marriage between decision making and evidence, which registered around exactly 907 participants, and of whom no fewer than 521 logged on continuously for an hour and a half. This was really great for us. And we shift from a webinar in only French to a bilingual webinar, French and English, especially with the active involvement of colleagues from the GI network. A notable output of these webinars is the creation of an active network on WhatsApp, which currently boasts actually at least almost 200 members, exactly 199 members. We are, yes.
Doudou, I have a follow-up question, very briefly. So what do you think has been the key to the success of this webinar in January? I was there, I remember we had an exceptional turnout. So why do you think that has happened?
So in my point of view is to be able to engage so much people and coming from diverse area of competence and diverse area of sectors. So previously we just have with us expert on the field on monitoring and evaluation. Now we have authorities, we have students, we have even civil society engaged on this kind of webinar, because they know that by following these webinars, they will be more aware of what is monitoring and evaluation happens, and what is happening in this field in the country. So for me, is just the diversity of the participant of this key and the continuous engagement of these targets.
Thank you, Doudou. Yeah. I mean, great to hear from you. Now I'd like to make a long jump and go all the way to Pakistan and ask our colleague Zahra Rao. She's the communication person for the CLEAR Centers for Pakistan and Central Asia. Zahra, welcome, and good afternoon for you. So for you, the same question, and I'd like to know if you can give us briefly a background about how your background as a communication person and how you ended up in monitoring and evaluation.
Awesome. Hello, everybody. Thanks, Patrizia. Wonderful to be here. So much like my colleagues over here, I think it wasn't completely planned. I've studied anthropology for my undergrad and my master's, so I knew that I wanted to go into a field where I would be interacting with people. I didn't realize M&E was one. And while I was looking back at my journey, I mean, I had to, because everybody was sort of going back into the past. I also thought that as a young person, I was a little confused about M&E. So I'm really happy that we have these platforms now where we can talk a little bit more about it to also inform young professionals and tell them about M&E. So after anthropology and wanting to do work with the people, I knew that M&E might be my calling. But I wouldn't be being very honest if I said it was entirely intentional. There's lots of entry-level M&E jobs, and that is one big reason why I ended up in M&E. And then from there, I went to comms because this often, and I think my bosses in the attendees, she might agree to this, when I say that there's lots of times when I simply go like, I didn't get it. Can you repeat yourself? So I think communication has become a very important part of my day-to-day life, just trying to understand complex things. And now I feel like I'm going back to being a much younger person now and asking for things to be simplified. So that's my journey so far. And,
thank you.
Yeah.
So if we focus on the challenges and the successes that you had, if you can tell us one or two challenges that you find to be the most difficult to overcome, or the one that present themselves more often, and if you can give an examples of a success story in your case, in your institution, in your region. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks, Patrizia. So successes and challenges at a very personal level, I think within an organization, I'd break this down into three parts. A challenge has been like I was talking about younger M&E people, a challenge has been seeing people and realizing that they're not understanding a word of what we're saying because there's so much jargon in M&E. There's really complicated words, and sometimes it almost seems like it's gatekeeping. So I feel like there's a lot of secrecy around M&E, and that has been a challenge. But one of the successes have been that, like I said, there are these platforms, there's a lot more awareness about this. Speaking specifically about Central Asia and Pakistan, I'd say there's also some challenges in dealing around transparency. So not all organizations, not all governments want somebody to come in and do M&E, somebody to come in and do evaluation. So even though they are often, more times than not, they're doing brilliant work, but there is some distrust along with the secrecy that we were talking about earlier. So challenge has been there's been two types of people that we have run into. One are very capable people who say, we know nothing about what you're saying. And then the other people who perhaps sometimes we meet in our stakeholders in the government, or, just people who've been used to doing things the way they're done. So they think that maybe we know everything. So juggling these two kinds of audiences has been a challenge, but I think success has been when we've found that, talk a lot about our successes, put them in a format that is understandable and accessible to everybody, and share those successes with people. Because when it comes to celebrating it, we don't just celebrate with just our colleagues, we also go back to our stakeholders, give them just a little piece of paper that says, look, you did this, and it worked. And so the next time when we go back to these stakeholders, they're much more open to listen to us, to try out new things. And so just this being more human-centric, it helps a lot. And so if we lead with that, instead of focusing more on the budget, I know those are of course important, politics, money, I think if we focus more on the intent and then the success, I think that has really worked for us.
Thank you. Thank you very much. In the meantime, I see that the Q&A has been answered by colleagues. Thank you very much, colleagues, for addressing the questions. And last, but definitely not least, we are going to ask Luca Padovani, which is part of the global team of communicators, to come and speak a little bit about his experience. Luca, same question for you. What's your background and how did you arrive to M&E?
Sure. Grazie, Patrizia. Hello, everyone. And really, really happy to be part of this discussion. So my name is Luca Padovani, of course. I'm Italian. I'm based in Lisbon. Been living here for the past 20 years. I'm a communication designer. And of course, I'm part of the GI Global team. My background is actually a different one. It's in corporate communication / marketing. But since I moved to Portugal 20 years ago and I didn't know the language, I found the right path was to specialize in focusing design and web design, because it was more technical and it didn't need too much of a knowledge of the language. So since then, I specialize in design and web design. And I've been working, the first project in Lisbon was actually supporting a global campaign for raising awareness about the MDGs, which are the precursors or the grandpas of the current SDGs. And since then, I've been collaborating with NGOs and multilateral organizations, international organizations, in different projects related to communication. Most of them are multi-stakeholder projects, and the majority have also a very large community base. So there is this idea of coalition, of collaborating, of being participative. And one of the main topic on the table always has been impact evaluation. So how do we measure the impact of what we do? This is true for NGOs, it's true for multilateral organizations, for any kind of stakeholders. So I'm not an expert in the field, but it was impossible not to pick up some of the jargon. And there is a lot of jargon, and yes, there are a lot of acronyms, and semantic in this field is very important. It's not just nuances. And I had also an hands-on training on a specific methodology, which is the social return on investment, SROI, social impact evaluation. And then, of course, I've contacted with national M&E system related work through GI.
Thank you, Luca. So you come with a slightly different look at the communication work, right? Because it's mostly on design and branding, usability. So what have been the challenges that you found in communicating through images and design, both the results of the evaluations, but in general communication? And what would you think what would you define as a success story for you?
Yeah, so I'll answer with different levels of examples. Let me start by picking one of the most challenging and yet the most rewarding projects, which is actually gLOCAL. And gLOCAL, when I say gLOCAL, it's the preparation of the week, so everything that comes before, and then what is going on right now in the present, and with what will happen after the weekends. It has been very challenging because it's a global initiative. It exists. It's the roots are going very far in the past, but still, it's something that it always changes. It's a global initiative, so it goes. As we know, we are coming from all around the world, different countries. So that means different languages, different time zones, different audiences, different formats, and so on, so on. And everything, all these elements have an impact on the way we plan communication and we deliver communication, of course. So the main idea, the main challenge behind this is to try to communicate with a unite voice and be very consistent. And that is connected also to the work that I do more specifically, because visually we also need to deliver the same story. So we need to focus on storytelling, and the story needs to make sense to us before we tell to somebody else. But we need also to find the same voice and tune ourselves so that we come across as a community. And then there are a couple of things that I would like to touch upon, which is, for example, the choice of photos. How do we represent something that is quite technical and somehow abstract as a methodology or evaluation and monitoring as concept and so on? It's very difficult to translate them through visual metaphors, and sometimes we try to do that to solve the puzzle by bringing in photos with people. But then there is another aspect, which is we need to be inclusive. We need to be representative of the global community. And so behind that, we need also to be intentional on what we do. How do we solve this? I would say that the most important tips is to work as a team. So communication, as it was said during the discussion, is not something that, even visually, is not something that comes at the end of the process of the evaluation, monitoring, and negotiation process, but it's embedded in it, because that way we can also think about resources. We can also think about, okay, how do we strategize? What is the focus that we want to consider for the story, and so on.
Thank you very much, Luca. It is great to hear from your point of view, and yes, I agree with you. gLOCAL has been a challenge that I think you have particularly excelled with. And so I am really tempted to stay a little longer. And if the audience bear with us, I wanted to briefly just read out some of the questions that we have received on the chat. Melissa wrote us, I would love to hear more about the specific questions you ask to the project teams to help you understand the objectives of the evaluation. What seems to be the key question that really allows you to understand why they are engaging in an evaluation? Another person wrote us, well, it's great to hear from communication specialists, and they play a crucial role in our organization. And I'd like to ask the panelists, where do they place themselves in the entire process of evidence generation and evaluation? So as I read these questions, if ever the panelists would like to answer, please take note, and I will give you the possibility to answer any of them as you wish. Then there is another one from Laura. Thank you very much for this insightful and creative webinar. What do you think of the importance of creating and leveraging evaluation communities of practice for dissemination of evaluation recommendation, trainings, and KM products? For instance, I worked at the UNICEF Evaluation Office, and I conducted dissemination of KM products through the Evaluation Office community of practice. And it was very effective for stakeholder engagement and retention. So the question is if we have any community of practice that we would highlight, and if this is a good place for disseminating products. And then another one is, how would you speak of the importance and feasibility of prioritizing human interest stories and impact stories in communication for M&E? Ooh, spicy one. I like this one. So is anybody interested in answering any of those? Please raise your hand because I might not see you. Any takers?
Okay, I think I responded to the one about the questions that we would ask to project teams. So I will pass on that one and respond to the one about communities of practice, if the space is conducive for disseminating our information. Absolutely, I would say yes. I belong to one community of practice that's not even based in South Africa. I'm based in South Africa. And it's actually quite interesting because you're also able to get the African audience onto that space as well and learn, they do tech stuff on that space. So learn more interesting stuff there. And some of my colleagues are also on the SAMIA board. So on the SAMIA, South African Monitoring Evaluation Association. So on there as well, there's a COP community of practice space. So we are able to share materials there, and they do wonders for our organization as well. So I think absolutely.
Thank you. I see Cristian, your hand is up, please.
Yeah, I really want to emphasize the idea of thinking communication when a project starts, not only at the end of the project, right? And this is especially important for organizations or people that are participating in specific evaluations that are on a project sort of based type of work, right? Because sometimes it happens that we forget completely about communication when we are planning and budgeting, right? And if we forget it, then we don't have any time, resources, or incentives to do properly the work of communication because we have to move to the next evaluation, right? So thinking in that part strategically and also in terms of time and resources, I think it's very important in the beginning too. And communications teams needs to be involved also in that part of the process. I wanted to emphasize specifically on that one.
Thank you. And if I may, I'll take the last one, and with that we will conclude the session about the importance of speaking about human stories and the human aspect and in the impact stories for M&E. So definitely we all dream about being able to say look, the person's life has changed for the better because there has been this intervention, the policy has been approved and it worked, the project was successful. However, sometimes we just cannot do it for several reasons. Sometimes the intervention we are talking about is a little bit far remote from the people, right? And so making such assumption is sometimes difficult. Other times, at least as a communicator, sometimes we don't have access to this information. So we have access to the report of the findings of the evaluation, but we don't have access to the interviews and what actually the people said and portray them in these stories. So I think for M&E, depending on the audience, definitely for making M&E relatable to everybody, it's really, really important to have human stories because people can relate to that. I can relate to another mother. I can relate to people working, you know, in a big organization. I can relate to other Italians. So if I can relate to people that are portrayed in those stories, I can understand better what they want to say. And that could be a hook for me to be interested in listening more. However, as Talitha said before, and other colleagues too, it's always about the audience. And sometimes we don't need to have this human element always present in every communication product that we have, because it really depends on the target audience. And sometimes, although the human element is ultimately the why we do what we do, but sometimes it doesn't have to be front and center. And that would be my take. So with that, please let me give an applause, like a virtual applause to all these stupendous panelists that we have today. Thank you so much. You have been great, and it's been a very fantastic session. Thank you to the audience that stayed with us for so long. And we will try to answer some of the questions in a follow-up blogs that we would like to publish once the gLOCAL is over, though, because right now we are way too busy. And so thank you so much. Good luck for the rest of the gLOCAL events to all our focal points, and see you soon. Bye.